Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Operational Services Committee meeting. I'm your chair, Councillor Chris Thiessen. Joining me here today on the meeting is Councillor Jenna Flack, Councillor Len Auger, and Mayor Jackie Clayton as members of this committee. We'll call this meeting to order as of right now, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement. The city respectfully acknowledges the Beaver, Cree, Dene, and Métis people as the original caretakers of these lands and surrounding areas. We are grateful to live, learn, work, and play on Treaty 8 territory within Turtle Island and acknowledge these lands have been home to diverse and sovereign First Nations since time immemorial. Thank you for that. Now we'll open up with the adoption of the agenda, and I'll turn to one of my committee members to formally adopt that. Councillor Flack.
Yeah, I move committee adopt the agenda as presented.
That motion is in order. Thank you, Ms. Flack. Call to question. And that motion carries unanimously. Going down the agenda, we have no delegations today, which brings us right to reports. And for that, I'll turn to our ever-faithful, ever-trusted Chief Glavin for his service area update.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. We'll start off in engineering and transportation. We've recently posted a tender for the Kerr Lane Centre parking lot improvements and upgrades west of their parking lot to pave that surface. As well, we've closed the tender for the 2026 intersection improvements that will see some milling and repaving of 108th Street and 100th Avenue intersection, as well as the 116th Street and 100th Avenue intersection. In corporate facility management, we have 3 tenders posted, one for the dispatch center, one for the service center washroom renovations, as well as Legion field upgrades for next year. In environment and parks, we've had our staff started flooding the city's 5 high-board rinks, as well as our low-board outdoor rinks, and we'll continue to do that as conditions allow. Lastly, in parks, our FireSmart contractor begins some of their work this week, largely doing some marking of areas that will be thinned. We will be providing communication to anybody who backs onto those areas in advance of any of the cutting operations, but we expect them to begin their work by the end of next week, working during daylight hours. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chief Glavin. I got Mayor Clayton in the queue currently.
Thanks so much, Chair Thiessen. Chief Glavin, can you give me an update in regards to the provincial program for traffic calming measures? I've heard a couple times from Minister Dreeshen that there was funds available to municipalities in that regard. I personally have seen nothing, and I'm curious if your team has seen anything.
Chief Glavin.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Thiessen. No, we have not seen anything. I know I did have our team look again, I want to say a couple weeks ago, to take a look and see if there was anything on the provincial website. None was found. Not aware of it having been launched.
Okay, I'll be sure to ask him when he's here this week for the ribbon cutting. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor Clayton. I'll look to my other committee members and sitting members of council around the table here today. Don't see any other questions. So looks like you got one and done there, Chief Glavin, and we'll move right along. To item 5.2, the Boulevard Naturalization Pilot Program final report. This one has had lots of conversation over the years. We look forward to the presentation, and I'll turn it back to Chief Glavin to introduce this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Thiessen. This was a pilot program that has just recently ended its 3rd year, which was the initial intent. When this was done, there were a few different areas that were recommended by administration to take a look at that would be good candidates for it. The method of naturalization, if you recall, was to simply stop mowing at the time rather than to reseed the area with natural seed mixes or any sort of planting. With that, we've seen some success, and some other areas have been more challenging. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeVries.
Welcome, Mr. DeVries. Look forward to your report.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. So as noted by Chief Glavin, the Boulevard Naturalization Pilot Program, or I'll call it the pilot, was initiated in 2023 in the spring, and it was a 3-year initiative to assess the aesthetic impact of naturalizing boulevards. The pilot itself was divided into 3 distinct areas. So we have 116th Avenue just north of Crystal Heights, 84th Avenue just south of Canfor, and then Resources Road along the berm. In year 1, the vegetation consisting mainly of existing grasses and then a small number of volunteer species was seen. In year one as well, public opposition emerged, and primarily from residents near the Resources Road site who were accustomed to that berm being mowed for a number of decades. The concerns themselves were heard and documented during some on-site engagement, and that fall, some mowed turf buffers along private residential fences were implemented. In year two, some more natural reseeding and modest biodiversity gains were observed across all three of those pilot areas. And then on the social side, the pilot-specific inquiries did drop by about 90%. So looking at year three, which was this past summer, at the 84th Avenue site, it did perform the strongest. When we look at it ecologically, we do see trembling aspen and balsam poplar suckers that are spreading into this site from adjacent tree stands. And so we look at this as its proximity to this natural ecosystem as being a key point to its success. Socially, at 84th Ave, the site generated minimal concerns overall, and it does remain as the most successful example of naturalizing achieved through simply the cessation of mowing. For the 116th Avenue site, this site is isolated from any natural tree stands and so then progressed more slowly. The biodiversity gains at 116th were limited when we compare those to the 84th Avenue site. Overall, the 116th Ave site generated little public concern during the 3-year pilot period. It is important to note that this site at 116th Ave is planned for future roadway expansion, and so retaining naturalization at this site we see is quite a practical approach for it in the interim, and does allow us to study natural succession in an area like this when it is isolated from a natural tree stand. And finally, Resources Road. This site struggled both ecologically and socially. Species establishment remained quite slow, and certainly as a high visibility corridor, the location did carry and does carry a heightened expectation for beautification. In 2025, for example, a member of the public actually illegally mowed a section of this pilot area between the Country Club Golf Course entrance and the Wedgwood entrance, just highlighting that ongoing dissatisfaction. We did do follow-up surveys on the sites this past fall, and the surveys received from the resources area did echo this pattern. Within the report, there's a lot of content. It's a long report, so my apologies. A lot of key lessons learned throughout the pilot. Just to highlight a couple for us, the adjacency to natural ecosystems we feel is a key component of success for naturalization, especially if we're trying to achieve it simply through the cessation of mowing. Obviously, we get the benefit of what we call free seeding, and so that's shown through the 84th Avenue site. Another lesson learned really around the Resources Road component and that area, demonstrating how long-standing mowing practices, especially within a high visibility corridor, do shape public expectations for a certain aesthetic and a manicured look. So one of the things that we've discussed internally is perhaps more gradual approaches within areas. So rather than explicitly ceasing mowing on a large width boulevard or roadway, is to look at perhaps stepping back mowing lines in a more gradual approach year over year. And another point that I did include in the report, not necessarily directly tested within the pilot, but just an observation from our team over the past few years, is that there is some growing success with naturalization on the development end. And so essentially working with developers, our team can establish some naturalized areas during development. So say a dry storm pond, actually seeding natural grass seed mixes within the storm pond right from the onset. And so therefore that becomes the baseline for a community or for a location. So again, a lot of information in the report and within the appendices. But for today's recommendation, the recommendation is that the Operational Services Committee recommend Council direct administration to retain naturalization at the 84th Avenue and 116th Avenue pilot areas and return the Resources Road area to pre-pilot mowing rotations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation of your report, Mr. DeVries. One thing I can say I really appreciate about the report is the timeline. So we get to see year 1, year 2, year 3, and the public can too if they're looking online on our website and reading the agenda on how it went throughout the years and the learnings that you were taking year by year by year, and how you went to mitigate some of the social discourse that was happening when we were naturalizing some areas that the public didn't really want. So I appreciate that, because it's not all roses and sunshine all the time, and it's nice to see sort of what your team went through in carrying through this pilot project. So with that being said, I'll just turn it over to committee, and I have Mayor Clayton in the queue for questions.
No questions, just comments rather, and happy to do business. Appreciate, as Councillor Thiessen said, the work that was put into this pilot project. I think that this is a perfect example of how a pilot should work. Council had an initiative that in turn was set out to save us money, and through the proper process of the project, we saw that some of it may not have been working. The report came back to council, and now we are where we are. And I had significant feedback, in particular on Resources Road. Actually, to be honest, that was the only feedback I had. I had no feedback on the other two areas. And I think you're exactly right. There's multiple reasons. The natural elements didn't seem to take off as anticipated. It was too close to existing residential and mowing habits, and it simply wasn't successful in that area. So I'll strongly support this going to council, and when come to council, I think this is the right decision. So thanks for your work put into this.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor Clayton. I have Councillor Auger in the queue.
Thank you, Chris Thiessen. I'm new to this, so I would like to hear what the original intent was of this pilot project, and I guess that's pretty well it. Like, it's all new to me, so I'd like to hear just a bit more about why and how it started and what it's all about.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. DeVries.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Yeah, so naturalization itself is not a new concept for the City of Grande Prairie. There's been naturalization practices happening since about 2017-18, where the Parks Department has looked for opportunities to naturalize areas that perhaps are, well, initially the scope was areas that were perhaps unsafe to mow, or there was question as to why we were mowing those locations, and certainly scaling back our mowing resourcing as a result. A lot of those areas that were perhaps too wet or too steep or easy to naturalize, we consider sort of the low-hanging fruit, had a lot of success with naturalizing some of these areas. And so then it became evident that if we were going to continue with naturalization, we needed to look at other areas, boulevards becoming one of those areas. So the pilot itself was initiated, as mentioned, the fall of 2022 and was implemented in the spring of 2023 as a way to investigate naturalizing boulevards and what that practice looks like and how it potentially can occur within our community.
And was there any cost savings by not mowing as much as you used to?
Thank you. Through Chair Thiessen. Within the pilot, I think an important component that we learned as well is that while naturalization may seem like no maintenance, it's just different maintenance. And so what occurred, especially within year 1 and year 2, is the cessation of mowing. Mowing itself is a control mechanism for things like noxious weeds. And so as soon as we ceased mowing, while we were able to reduce capacity on the mowing side, we had to increase and make sure that our weed inspectors were inspecting those sites, and then our integrated pest management team was following up with spraying activities. We also saw increase with some of the garbage that just ends up tied up in some of the tall grass. So now we're sending out a crew to ensure we're doing sanitation. And then as well, just with the pilot itself, the inquiries, the bit of administrative overhead in managing inquiries and discussions on the topic. So the scope of the pilot certainly not large enough in terms of total hectares to realize significant hard savings when we also incorporate some of those other costs that came along.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Mr. DeVries. Thanks for the question, Councillor Auger. I also have Chief Glavin in the queue for a bit extra.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Thiessen. Just to add to Mr. DeVries, when we go back to when we started naturalizing, around 6-7 years ago, we have eliminated about 11 seasonal positions due to naturalization, but it does take time where you don't have to manage the weeds as opposed to the mowing. There's a bit of a trade-off, but after a naturalization establishes, that's where you can start to see some cost savings.
Yeah, chokes them thistles out, I guess. Thank you for that, Chief Glavin. I do have a question for you, Mr. DeVries. You mentioned in your report that some of the learnings you got before in working with the development community that would establish a baseline for naturalization in new developing areas. Are there any established areas that through this process that your team has identified as potential future projects for naturalization where it could be a benefit to the community?
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Are you referring to any new development areas on queue or just existing?
Existing.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for the question, Chair Thiessen. When we did the assessment to evaluate which boulevards to actually bring forward to the pilot, we did look across the city, and in that report, I think included a few other potential locations. But as mentioned earlier, the locations now that are available when the low-hanging fruit is picked are locations that would come with a bigger social component that we would need to consider. So rather than sort of the backside of South Bear Creek where we can cease mowing and very little impact socially, some of the new areas that we would look at would certainly have that element where we would be behind people's homes, perhaps around wet ponds and areas like that. So we would have to consider some of that. So initially for the pilot, looking at the boulevards, these were the three that we wanted to look at and certainly brought forward. We don't currently have a large plan or scope that's ready, if you will, for this.
Okay, no, that's good to know. And just based on your learnings, you said a lot about early engagement. That's kind of what put the chip on people's shoulders when they weren't sort of realizing what was happening at the time, and we need to communicate that better. Would that be some of the learnings if you chose to go with an established area is to get in front of this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Thiessen, for that point. Certainly, and that's noted within item number 1, the engagement timing is critical. I think with the pilot obviously coming into a growing season, we wanted to kind of get it moving as quickly as possible so we could start to see how it looks aesthetically on the landscape. The sacrifice there being engagement timeline. So if there were any future scopes, then that would be something that we would want to incorporate. And potentially to item 6 within that lessons learned is there some kind of a strategy that we actually want to develop that lays a bit more clearly for individuals in the community and for us, where how do we select sites, what criteria do we include? So that might be part of some future work if desired.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. DeVries. I have Councillor Bressy in the queue.
Great, thanks. Coming out of budget and communication things, I think that's a story about the 11 seasonal positions getting eliminated, that we need to get better at telling stories like that because we are finding a lot of savings as an organization and those don't get around the community. I didn't realize there was that many seasonal positions we'd lost, so good job on that. What I'm curious about is if we've looked at any more active routes towards naturalization, where for me, I'd love to get away from grass boulevards. Aesthetically, I get that's subjective, but they don't do nearly as good job of retaining stormwater, cooling our city as trees do. They don't do anything to screen noise from communities. And here, in terms of getting away from just mowed grass, we went the really cheap. We thought it might be free route, although it wasn't free when you had to control weeds. And we've got other places like around the old bypass where we've gotten the very expensive route of planting large trees to start growing. Has there been any consideration of a pilot program, or are we aware of any other communities that have been successful going kind of a middle route where you're not planting big trees, but you're literally hiring a tree planter to plant a couple thousand seedlings and seeing how that goes, or you're doing a much lower cost but intentional planting that we've done on some of our main boulevards? Has that been considered at all?
Mr. DeVries?
Yeah, thank you, through Chair Thiessen. Certainly is something that we looked at. We worked on staging essentially. So if we look at the Boulevard pilot program, we could call these 3 years the first stage. There are opportunities where in the city of Edmonton, for example, once they cease mowing and they get those noxious under control, then opening the ground up is a little less risky. Concern if you have noxious weeds, obviously, and you open the ground up and seed new things, then you might have a noxious problem quite quickly. So once they get past that first stage, then they do have stage 2, which looks at planting some more natural grasses, some seedlings, and then move into stage 3, which is some larger trees. There is an area, though, in Grande Prairie where through maybe not the seedling lens, but certainly through much more cost-effective plantings of smaller trees. So if we look at the west side of Pinnacle neighborhood, again, not naturalization specifically, but intentional planting of smaller tree species, and over time have actually grown up into a bit of a, I call it a bit of a windbreak or a forest along that edge. So that is an opportunity or a potential model as well, where rather than just ceasing mowing, but of course anything like that requires a bit of funding up front.
Yeah, and I know another place I'd highlight is along the bypass on the south side, actually along the ditch, right along the walking path. I know that there's been some grooming and some intentional work going there that I think has been really successful, in my opinion, as somebody that walks past it every day. So I guess I'm not on committee. I look forward to this getting to getting to council, but I really think we should not be squandering 3 years of work and opportunity, but we should be looking at what's a phase 2 of this look like, where we can actually be planting things along here, is my opinion.
Thanks for sharing your opinion, Councillor Bressie. Look to the rest of the committee and other members of council sitting around the table for comments or questions. Seeing none, I'll look to do business. And I thought I heard Mayor Clayton say she's ready to do business.
Happy to move as presented.
All right, so Mayor Clayton moves as presented, which is that we would recommend Council Direct Administration to retain naturalization at the 84th Avenue and 116th Avenue pilot areas and return the resources area to pre-pilot mowing rotations. With that motion being fully in order, we'll call to question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that motion carries. Thanks again, Mr. DeVries, for the excellent report, excellent work, and look forward to seeing you again. Moving right along, no correspondence, other business, or policy to review, so I'll turn it back to our outstanding Chief Glavin for the outstanding items list.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Just one item to address, item 1344, business license fees. This is one that I did provide a brief update at a council committee of the whole prior to election that we never removed. Quick recap, we did meet with the executive directors of the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Association and didn't feel like there was a lot of support on that at the time.
Okay. Right, so are we striking it from there?
I would recommend we remove it.
Okay. I got questions from Mayor Clayton.
Sorry, my iPad's doing an update. Can you tell me more on what 1133 or whatever is?
1344 business license fee.
Sure. Yep, 1344. So back at budget deliberations in 2024, there was a motion, or it might have been just before budget deliberations, there was a motion to direct administration to consult with businesses in 2025 regarding the possibility of implementing a business license fee in 2026. So we did that initial consultation with the executive directors of the Downtown Association and the Chamber of Commerce and didn't feel like there was a lot of support to continue with that at the time. So that was, we limited to that, to the consultation.
Does that answer your question, Mayor Clayton?
How did that conversation go to all of council? That was a council discussion to put it, was it?
It was committee.
It was committee? Okay. No comments, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the outstanding items list as presented? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the outstanding items list as amended. Councillor Flack.
Yeah, I move committee received the December 2nd outstanding items list as amended for information.
That motion is in order. I'll look to committee for questions, comments, or debate. Seeing none, we'll call it to question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that motion carries for nothing, is unanimous, and our time is unanimous now as our committee is up. So thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be right back with our next committee meeting here. This meeting is adjourned.